Welcome to Performance Mesh, episode 4. My name is John O'Neill. I'm here with my co-host, Eric Manis, and today we have a very special guest. I'm going to kick it over to Eric to let him introduce him.
A great friend of mine, actually, somebody I consider a great mentor, somebody I've learned a ton from, Trevor from Resilient Physical Therapy. Trevor and I worked together for probably about 3 years in the same location at Annex Sports Performance. He's somebody I learned a ton from. We're pumped to have him on the pod. How are you doing, Trev?
Thank you for having me on, guys. I appreciate the kind words there, Eric. It was definitely like 3 of the most fun years of working, and we've had some pretty good times at work with shooting the shit with everybody, and we had a very good crew there.
Oh yeah.
Now, Trevor, I know you listened to the previous podcasts that we've done. So what is the thing you're most uncomfortable with, or most on edge about us asking today?
I'm an open book, man.
All right.
If you guys want to ask, I'm good.
All right, cool. That makes our job easy. Eric, what do you got for Trevor to kick us off?
So Trevor, I actually wanted to get you fired up a little bit and get you into the social medias. Where do you think that people are really missing the boat right now that you see online?
I mean, that's such a loaded question. We text, our group texts very often, and a lot of it is just sharing things that are a little bit frustrating for us. I really think one of the things that just always bothers me is just the overcomplication that people try to use in social media to make themselves sound smarter, to make something sound more complex that really just doesn't do anything for anybody. I don't think it does anything for other coaches or other practitioners. I don't think it does anything for athletes who are trying to gain information for their own training online. I don't think it does. It's just stuff that I think is really not kind of productive overall for the industry when we're just trying to pump our own tires and use jargon and use language that really just sounds, it makes the simple complicated versus, we work in a field with a lot of complexity and what we do has a lot of complexity to it, but we need to simplify things, not to try to make it complicated. So that's definitely probably one of the number one overarching things in the social media realm that really just grinds my gears.
Sorry, Trevor, I would say you're a big, simple training guy. We're not going to see too much fluff when I watch your rehab and anything like that. Can you just talk a little bit about maybe a little bit about your training philosophy, and then I want to get into kind of how you think about your long-term rehabs, and so you can maybe describe some of the athletes you're working with mostly, and how you kind of take them from day one until you release them into a season.
I mean, I would say I truly try to have a client or athlete or patient-centric approach where it's everything that I'm doing is I'm choosing to try to help them in whatever way that they're looking for, whether it's somebody who wants to just feel better overall, whether it's somebody that, wants to move better for their sport, whether it's somebody that needs to rehab from an injury to get back to their sport, but always trying to do something that is going to help them get to their end goal. That isn't just me kind of throwing shit at the wall to see what I think is kind of cool and what I think works. And because I saw something kind of fancy online, and I seen kind of back to social media thing, it's that's what I see a lot of is people are just trying things that I don't think are for the benefit of their client. It's for the benefit of themselves. So for myself, I truly try to give every person I work with just the best experience that they possibly can. And I try to make sure that they are getting all of the different things that they need. So from a kind of rehab standpoint, right now my caseload is full of a lot of ACL kids right now. I'm taking over some of Greg's elbows since he's on paternity leave for a little bit. So that's been kind of interesting to have the difference with them, because it's in the ACL world, I have to do kind of everything. So it's I am truly going over I kind of think of it as long-term athletic development where we're really working on, the end goal is in mind, whether it's 8 or 12 months to get the athlete back on their sport. But when I work with somebody day one, the reason we want to get back their knee flexion and knee extension isn't just purely for the sake of getting that range of motion, which is super important, but it's so we can eventually have them be able to get into the positions that they need to for the sport later on. So I'm always kind of think of the exercises that I'm introducing in the early phase of rehab, there's a reason that I coach them and a reason that I want things to look a certain way to impact what we're going to do like later on. But it's always like really simple. It's like there's a reason I want a split squat or a lunge done a certain way, because that's going to be important when we have to like get into a certain position for deceleration in, you know, month 4, 5, 6. So I'm always kind of thinking of the end game, but it's like trying to maximize what we do on a day-to-day basis to like help them reach their goals.
Yeah, and I don't want to continue to blow smoke up Trevor's butt, but I'm gonna do it right here. But I really genuinely can't think of a better environment and a better practitioner for somebody who tears their ACL to go to. Can you just talk a little bit about like that experience and kind of how you've built expertise on that specific injury, and just talk about some of like the successes you've had? Because honestly, like watching these mostly girls come in, because oftentimes they were coming in and they were pretty undertrained, right? So they were just physically weak. And then working with Trevor, you see these people 3-4 months later, and you're like, whoa, like who is that? Like, where did that person come from? It's like, oh, that was Sally. Like she couldn't even like walk straight a couple weeks ago, but now she's like either doing something insane or just doing like a pistol squat up a super high box, or just really looking sharper in her drills. Can you just talk a little bit about how you're built the knowledge up through the ACL world and some of your successes?
Well, thank you. I very genuinely appreciate the kind words of that. I mean, I think like my interest in that really started like from my own, like I never tore my ACL, but like from an sport standpoint, like I always appreciated like the movement of sport, like why athletes move the way that they do, like not only for myself, but when I watch athletes, when I watch games, that's always kind of like where my mind is at. And then like seeing kids get back to their sport and be clear to the sport, they look like, you know, they're just so unprepared, not even from like a conditioning or strength standpoint. I'm like, they're just so uncomfortable moving. So that was one of the things that really drove me to like try to figure out like, well, how can I get somebody back on the court or on the field where they actually feel like themselves to a certain degree. So that's where I think a lot of like my passion kind of has come from. So I've always loved watching athletes move. And then I've been introduced to like, you know, people like Lee, who's obviously been a huge mentor for kind of all of us on, you know, like just how he teaches multi-directional speed, and then kind of taking some of the strength and conditioning, you know, and rehab principles, and just finding a way to actually like have a logical process that actually like gets people back to sport safer. Because we see a lot of cases at our clinic in Chatham where it's like maybe they don't do their initial post-op stuff with us, and we get an athlete like 4 or 5 months out and like they're just so unprepared, but like their doctor has cleared them to like start doing return to sport, which means like running, cutting, you know, whatever. And it's like I have a case right now that I'm working with where this girl is a D1 lacrosse player. She's 5.5 months post-op, and she can't do a knee extension without pain, and she can't do it with above 20 pounds. It's like, wow. You're a D1 athlete, and she's supposed to be cleared, you know, like based upon the season, it'll be whatever, another 4 or 5 months. So it should be roughly 11 or 12 months out, which is like a good time frame. But it's like, she should be light years ahead of kind of like where she is right now. So what I try to do is just like understand, like, you know, what the person's limitations are, what are their like actual kind of strengths and weaknesses, how can we maximize those, how can we improve those to help them get comfortable when we start doing a lot more dynamic kind of movements. I think part of it too, my mindset has not necessarily shifted, but I think it's like it's the when and where you apply those things. Like you saw me do a lot of like the, you know, agility stuff with my athletes, because I think there's some kids that really need that because they need so much repetition and they need so much practice to build confidence again, versus like I have some kids where like once they're strong, they move with just like no inhibition, like they just are fantastic. So like I don't need to spend nearly as much time doing like the kind of like teaching you how to shuffle, lateral run, how to just like kind of like take the training wheels off and like be free with that stuff. So that's kind of been an interesting thing for me lately is kind of understanding like the differences between the clients that I work with, and like how, you know, roughly the same 2 kids at 7 months post-op could be doing the exact same stuff, kind of like, you know, are capable of doing the exact same stuff, but then what we do with them in terms of the session can be very different based upon like obviously the timing of what sport they're going to get back to and when, but also like, does this person have a lot of fear and apprehension about, cutting, versus like some kids, like once they have a little bit of confidence, they feel good. It's like, they're just, like there's nothing standing in their way. So then they just kind of become much more of like a true like performance in a sense, like, all right, we're going to work on, max velocity work. We're going to work on really just like improving all of your outputs, because, once you have that stuff, like the kind of natural athlete that you are, just gonna take over.
So Trevor, you mentioned Lee Taft in there. I'm actually not sure if you said Taft, but I know you said Lee as part of that, and I know that's who you meant. Other than Lee Taft, who are other like big influences of yours, or people that you tend to learn a lot from?
I think I'm very fortunate. Like, honestly, like our group is a huge influence on me for like how we learn. I think like I always love like watching Eric coach and seeing things that like he would do that would inspire me or give me an idea of like, oh, that's something I want to like implement with my people. Like outside of our group and, Greg and Doug and things like that, I think Alan Groover is one of our mentors. Me, Greg, and Doug all did a clinical with him in Arizona. Like he just kind of, you said before, it's like I try to keep things simple. Like Alan was always just like, keep it real, dude. Like I think people just try to make things complicated. It's like when you keep it real, like shit works a lot better. So I think from an overall like kind of thought standpoint, that's like he's been a huge mentor. I would say like, I don't like I can name a ton of different people like Bill Hartman, Ty Terrell. Like there's so many people that have been huge influences on me. I think like now I have really gotten to the point where I'm more just trying to like refine the things that I do and make my own thought processes better. But like all of my thought processes are so like influenced by all of these different people who I've learned from for, the last 10 years or whatever it's been. Like I think about my time back at Mike Boyle's, and it's like there was so much stuff that they did that I didn't know why they did it. But now 10 years later, when I think about it, I'm like, oh, that was really cool. And like I understand, like now I'm like, I understand why I would want to apply that like with my own athletes in my own setting.
So Trevor, you're at home. Let's say it's Friday, end of the work week. You sit down, you're patting yourself on the back, thinking about all the compliments that Eric gave you today. What sports, in order, are you most likely to be watching?
Well, on a Friday, so I mean, football.
Remove Friday from it.
Yeah, that's going to change things.
Yeah, it's free time. You get to pick your sports.
So it would be like the Green Bay Packers above all else, right? And I'll kind of explain the answer in a second, but it's like I will watch like the Packers above anything else, obviously. And then it's like I would say any NFL, any college football. Then it's, I don't know if I would choose NBA or like college basketball. And then it would kind of be probably like hockey and then baseball. Like I honestly can't really watch any baseball on TV. I can go to a game and I enjoy that. I can watch playoff baseball. I think that's really fun, but football.
That's interesting. You say that to it. You're talking to a big baseball guy.
I know, big baseball guy.
But
hey, yeah, look behind me.
Yeah, exactly. I got a blank wall behind me. No, but so like I had a conversation a while ago where like with someone who like they're like, oh, I love this team. And it's like, okay, but like it's like, oh, I'm a huge Giants fan. But it's like, okay, do you watch like the NFL? Like, no, I only watch the Giants. And it's like, oh, so you're not a football fan, you're just a Giants fan. Like I would say I'm equally a Packers fan to like a football fan in general, but the Packers kind of come first. But I would watch like any football game. I can watch, I played D3 football. It's like, I'll watch D3 football games. I don't care. It's like all that stuff is just super, super fun to me. Because again, I think it's like, I just love like watching people move and trying to figure out like why people do what they do. That's like a lot of my interest when I like watch a game that I'm not necessarily like rooting for somebody for, you know what I mean?
Eric, what do you got on that question? What's your order? Because I know you're a much bigger baseball fan than Trevor is.
Oh yeah. I mean, the New York Jets are not numero uno, and that's tough because I'm sure Trevor would agree. Like if the Jets lose, it ruins the rest of my week. So I've had a lot of bad weeks
a lot of bad
last couple of years. So yeah, I would think, and it's tough because when you have a family, you can't really watch, but like I would watch like 12 hours of football in a day. Like my dad does that right now. He'll watch the 12 o'clock game all the way up to like the Pac-12 game at 10:30, and he won't even move. Right. So I would do that if I could, but that's just, you kind of have to pick your battles. So it would be, football, college football. I would say consider myself just a Yankees fan. I couldn't watch really baseball. Hockey's not doing much for me right now. I do think I enjoy the NBA, but I didn't watch one college basketball game this year, which was unique. So,
I mean, baseball lends itself to that, though, right? Like the games are so long; they play every day. It's not like football where it's like, all right, this is my day a week. I'm going to watch the whole league. Like you can't do that in baseball. Like they're all playing in the same days, and it's every day.
yeah.
Like John, could you catch like the second and third inning of a Yankees game and then like turn it off and be okay with that?
Yeah, so I'll watch. Let's say they play 6 times in a week. I'll probably watch 2 full games, 2 games where I get at least 6 innings in, and 2 games where I get 1 to 3 innings in.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive. I mean, that's still a ton of like.
It's a lot, and like the 1 to 3 days, or really 0 to 3, are like it's a Wednesday 1 o'clock game, and I'm at work.
Yeah.
And so that'll happen. But yeah, I would say like today I watched the full game. Yesterday I watched probably half. Friday I watched some of it. So I probably average 6 innings per game throughout the season.
My follow-up for you then is like, are you like intently watching the entire game when you're sitting down for it?
Not necessarily. I'll have my phone open, but a part of it is like I'm checking the box scores, stats, etc. Like I'm into it. Like I know what the lineups look like. I know what pinch hit like availability each team has.
Right.
But don't even think about if he's out of game. Don't even think about asking him to leave that game. That guy's staying till the last pitch.
Yeah, no. Like,
oh my god, I learned the hard way. I learned the hard way. I wanted to leave this Yankees Red Sox game, and John wouldn't leave. He was fucking staying.
Wasn't that like a 2-0 game? It was the game with Porcello threw a shot.
Yeah,
right?
I know. But I mean, it was very clear the Yanks didn't have it that night. No,
okay.
I'm a beat the traffic guy.
If the tying run could come on deck, you stay at the game.
Yeah, but you know that the Yankees weren't going to win that game.
You never know, man. Baseball has no.
Yeah, that's true.
Trevor, this will set up our top 5 for today, because I knew college football would be in your top 3.
Yeah.
I figured NFL would be 1. So you gave NFL, college football 1, 2. So I want to have you and Eric guess on this one. So put some time putting this together. Eric, I was telling Trevor, originally I was looking into top 5 Packers quarterbacks of all time, but it's like Rodgers, Favre, Bart Starr, and then nobody else you've ever heard of. So that one was out.
Here's a trivia question for Trevor. Could you name another Packers quarterback who played 16 games besides Brett Favre, Bart Starr, and Aaron Rodgers?
Yeah, Lynn Dickey, Don Majkowski. Yeah,
this guy's a fan.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep, and those are the names that I was looking at. Those 2 in particular were the names that I was looking at for the list, and I'm like, oh, this will just be awkward because I don't even know how to pronounce the second guy's name. I've never heard of him.
They're like the only ones that like honestly played more than like a season. You know what I mean? Like Lynn Dickey, I think, was there for like 6 or 8 years, and Majkowski was there before Brett Favre took over, and he was like there for whatever.
If Lynn Dickey came to my house right now,
you have no idea.
Said, I'm Lynn Dickey. There's no chance I know who he was. He could be wearing his full jersey. I'm sorry, man. I don't know you.
I don't think I would either. Like if you show me a picture of them, I don't think I know what he looks like. I just like know the name from like scroll.
Yeah.
You know.
Okay.
They had a quarterback in the 30s that started like 6 or 7 years. He was also on the short list of the next guys. Arnie something. I forget the last name, but how do you rate, like, I mean, this is more just a big theoretical question. Any football that occurred before like probably 1970, maybe 1960, like how do you even, like, those guys, the linemen were 220 pounds.
Yeah, like that's like the funniest stat in the world to me is like the Green Bay Packers, like 1966 Super Bowl one offensive line average like 247 pounds.
Yeah.
They play both ways. The line guys play both ways.
Yeah.
Crazy, man.
Yeah, like those, it's like uncomparable, especially in that sport, because the sizes, they would just get blown off the ball right away.
Yeah.
But do you think if you applied modern day sports science to those guys, and gave them all the technology and nutrition knowledge, how do you think those guys would stack up?
I think there are definitely like people from that time where like they would, like Jim Brown would be a freak in any era.
Yeah.
Like Dick Butkus would have been a freak. Ray Nitschke was like a 6'3", 235-pound middle linebacker. And when they didn't, like lift weights and shit, it's like he probably would have been 6'3", 265 and still been a freak. So I think there are definitely like a number of guys that would have been monsters still. But yeah, I mean, it's just like, it is so different when your running back was, 10 pounds lighter than your offensive lineman. It's now that would never happen in today's NFL.
All right, so here we go with the top 5. Okay, so originally I was thinking about just doing this like ever or within the last 50 years, but just too many possible names, and you guys would have had to have Heisman Trophy winners memorized. So I am going of the last 25 Heisman Trophy winners. Okay, of the last 25, who do I have ranked as the best 5 NFL players from that list? So they won the Heisman Trophy and became good NFL players.
Oh my God.
And I can give clues on these guys too.
And
for the record, of the 25, there were only like 7 of them that became good in the NFL.
Yeah.
So this is just of those 7.
So like
Charles Woodson would have to be number 1, right?
Charles Woodson is number 1.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Great one to start with. Like
Charles Woodson's number 1. And I debated the number 2 being above him because the number 2 has an MVP in the NFL, but Woodson just did it for a long, long time. And
Cam Newton.
Who is it?
Cam Newton?
No, so Cam Newton I put at number 6.
Okay.
Wow.
How
about
I debated Cam Newton here. I just feel like his prime was so short, and so was my number 5. And so you could tell me that this guy's much better than number 5 here, but I feel like number 5 is a lot more like culturally relevant, like more memorable.
Tim Tebow?
Tim Tebow didn't make it.
Okay. I assume he's a quarterback then.
So on the list, numbers 2, 3, and 4 are quarterbacks. Number 5 is a running back.
Number 5 is a running back.
He's got over 10,000 yards rushing in the NFL. But he did not have that long career.
But he didn't have that long of a career. That's an
like sub 10 years.
Did Adrian Peterson win the Heisman?
No, not
Peterson. When we didn't win it, did he? We didn't. No. Give me the team that the.
We'll go. All right, so we'll go clues going up. So number 5 won the Heisman Trophy at Texas as a running back.
Oh, Ricky Williams.
Okay, a lot more like culturally, or like he and Cam Newton. So I think that's a good debate over who is the better NFL player.
I would say Ricky Williams was better than Cam. Yeah.
He had one year he rushed for like over 1,800 yards, but then like a year later he was suspended for smoking weed and was like never the same again.
But then he came back and still had like another 1,000 or 2,000 yard season, which is crazy. As like a 32-year-old too.
Yep. No, he was really good. He had his career derailed because of drug policies that no longer exist in the NFL, or ones that are different now. But that guy would have had like 14,000 rushing yards if he had stayed on the field.
You don't have Derrick Henry on there, do you?
Derrick Henry, I'm putting as hasn't done it for quite long enough yet, but I debated putting him number 2. Wow. But I have him off the list, and honestly, this is a big flaw on the list because my number 3 has done it for shorter than Derrick Henry.
Oh.
Lamar Jackson.
Lamar Jackson's number 2.
Wow. Yeah, I don't know if I would put. I guess because of the MVP, that makes sense. But it would be hard to choose Lamar over Derrick Henry. I feel like. Yeah,
Derrick Henry probably should have been on this list. Now that I'm thinking about it out loud, he probably should be number.
Yeah, I mean he's the best player. He's probably
number 3 and 4 were both quarterbacks for the same franchise in the NFL.
Ooh.
One is still that quarterback.
Oh, so you have Joe Burrow. I'm putting it on my phone, but
yeah.
And Carson Palmer.
So Carson Palmer had like a decent long career. Joe Burrow I have at number 3. Joe Burrow is probably going to be he's probably going to be like a MVP candidate for the next decade.
Yeah, for sure. No, he's going to be like the standard bearer at.
But if you look at that list, just as I'm barely a college football fan at this point, but I know you're a big one. If you look at that list, there's a bunch of guys you're like, oh my God, this guy won the Heisman. Forgot.
Oh yeah, I mean,
I'll tell you who should be number one, and this is my childhood hero is Eric Crouch, Nebraska.
dude, that's what I was just about to say.
Nebraska
Eric
favorite.
Crouch. Playing with Eric Crouch in like the NCAA football, like whatever it was, 99 or whatever it was like the best. He was the cheat code back then.
I vividly remember he caught the touchdown pass he caught against Oklahoma. Me and my dad went ape shit. It was a double reverse pass, and he was wide open and he caught it. And then that year they lost to they lost to Kansas State or Colorado. And I cried my eyes out, man. It was devastating to me. I was a big Husker fan.
What's really funny too about like Eric Crouch is you look at his like stats, and his stats from his Heisman year aren't like the world's greatest stats. You know what I mean? Like he had like 10 rushing touchdowns, which was good for QB, but he had a decent number of there's like 10 or 12 touchdown passes and like 7 interceptions. It's like he wasn't.
Yeah,
like,
I think he kind of stole that award.
Yeah.
Where are we at for the list, John?
All right, so I'll repeat it. You know what? I'm going to put Derrick Henry in the list. So we'll go Charles Woodson, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, Carson Palmer, then probably Derrick Henry there with Ricky Williams right after. So we'll go to
I don't think Ricky Williams is better than Derrick Henry.
No, he's not. But like Ricky Williams' peak was right near it.
He hung around with the Dolphins for a while, you know, like when they ran the wild, they invented the Wildcat and they had him and Cadillac Williams in the backfield. Like that was
awesome.
Yeah,
that was awesome.
It was Ronnie Brown, wasn't it?
Yeah, they had
Ronnie. Oh yeah, Ronnie Brown.
Yeah, Ronnie Brown. I remember they beat the Pats like week 1 using the Wildcat.
I mean,
Can you imagine?
Do you know what the Auburn backfield was when they were there?
It was Cam, Cadillac, and Ronnie Brown, right? No, that wouldn't overlap.
Brandon Jacobs, Cadillac Williams, and Ryan Brown were in the same Auburn backfield.
It's different national championship, but that's something else.
All right, Trevor, what do you got new that you're trying to learn more about in the field?
That's a good. I did the. A lot of it for me, I think it's more of like I think there's so many things that have been that I've been learning that like I'm trying to figure out how I want to be like how I can actually use them kind of effectively. Like VBT has been around forever, right? I'm like just trying to figure out like when and where I'd want to use that within my like long-term like rehab for an ACL athlete. The ISO course that Sportsmith did of Alex Nantera was like an awesome course, and I've been using that stuff a lot, and I'm a very big fan of that. So I think for me, it's like those kind of I don't know what you're gonna call it, like methods, if you will, but just like how can I fit them into what I'm already doing that is gonna just make the stuff that I'm already doing even more effective for my athletes. Because I think the VBT stuff I think makes so much sense to me. The hard part for me sometimes in my setting is like I only have an hour with somebody to like set up VBT isn't always going to be the best use of my time. So that's the kind of hard part sometimes. But yeah, so I just want to do a better job of being able to like implement these kind of different training modalities kind of within my rehab work. Because I do think there's so much value that stuff adds. I just haven't kind of figured out like from a logistical execution standpoint what makes the most sense right now.
So Trevor, I think something that gets a little bit misunderstood on social media, and I think that people just don't really know why you would put it in a program is like a snap down.
Yeah.
And I know you're I've seen you use that and are a big proponent of using the snap down as a training exercise, right? Can you just talk about, people say it's like, oh, you don't land like that, and sports is so chaotic, you're never going to land in this perfect position. Can you just talk about like what are you getting out of a snap down and what people are missing on that in this kind of exercise? I
view a lot of like, it's funny because I think that's something for myself that's like changed is like, all you're ever doing is just, I'm trying to change, like there's some quality that I'm trying to train, whether it's like the ability to like get into a good loading position quickly, which is like what a snap down is. And I'll like elaborate that on that in a second, or it's like, you're improving like rate of force development or, it doesn't matter what exercise you're choosing. It's just like, what are the qualities that you're trying to actually improve with those exercises? So for like a snap down, it's like you're working on the ability to like unweight really quickly and apply the brakes really quickly. So I think that can be an exercise that like, and I think a lot of exercises kind of should be this way, that once you can do it, you just kind of move on from it, right? I think it's like, it's if you can't do it, you should be able to do it. Like if you're a healthy athlete who's going to be playing sports at a high level, moving at really fast, high velocities, it's like you should be able to do a snap down really well. You should be able to do like, getting into like a quarter squat. You should be able to go into a single leg. You should be able to do a split squat or a lunge, like all those different variations you should be able to get into. Once you can do it, then you have to find a way to be able to make it harder. So for like myself, it's like I use it really early on because what post-op ACL kids don't really want to do is like load their quad, and they don't want to load their quad fast. So once we have some quad strength, then I use it as a way to kind of like improve that eccentric deceleration capability of the athlete to be able to handle, like this really quick flexion moment at their knee, but then also be able to apply tension into it to stop themselves from like getting buried and, going down into the ground. Because when I watch athletes who are injured move, this strategy that they use is they just stiffen up that limb and they don't let their knee flex. So it's like I use it as a way to help them improve that ability to flex their knee fast and control it, which is the eccentric kind of rate of force development of the quad is like one of the qualities that we work on with that stuff. So I think it's a super important exercise, like part of an exercise progression, but it's not like that's not the end stage. Like the end stage would be like being able to do a depth drop jump, or right, like something that's much higher intensity where the output's much greater. But that is, to me, is like one of the teaching tools that we use. It's the same thing as like if you teach somebody like a bear hold before you have them, I don't know, just that's like, this is your starting spinal position, this is just what we're trying to get into. It's like that's not the end all be all, that's not the end stage of the progression, but it's a teaching tool to have them do whatever. But it's also a preparatory tool to help them get ready for the stuff that's to come later on. And that's where like something that you guys just asked too was like, what I want to learn. For me, it's like the force plate stuff has completely changed what I do on a day-to-day basis with my athletes. So just continuing to like use that information. That's where like the profiling your athletes is super helpful to me, and I want to get better at that. And then tracking those changes, and trying to compare like, well, when I use VBT with this athlete, how do things change? Just trying to like become a little bit more methodical in terms of, what the process is for implementing all these different types of training is something I do want to get better at for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the, I think you're very fortunate that you have took a deep dive in this, because I think we all agree, like if you're able to continue like test your athletes on the force plate and see like on that day what they're deficient in, and then be able to train it, and like the fact that you took a deep dive on it has probably just really changed the way you're treating people, right?
But totally, like I would like to think I have a decent eye to be able to watch people do things, because I spend all day doing it, but it's like there's still things that like you just can't see, and to have like objective measures from it, and to see like the force time curve and see a strategy change from your first time doing it to your last time doing it, like because of the different things that you're trying to implement, like it helps me just be more specific with my interventions that I choose. So I'm like, oh, this person's like, their max force is pretty good, like they're really strong, but they're not good they don't get into a good position when they load, or they don't really load fast. So it's like, well, then how can we improve the ability to like load fast, right? So it just gives me a better idea of like how to be more specific based upon their personal limitations, rather than just being like, kind of more general in a sense that like, we're in this stage of our rehab, therefore these are the things that we're going to be doing. Well, it's like, what if that stuff's easy for them? Like how do I know that I'm kind of on the right track is I think why the force plates have been so helpful for me is that it's like, it helps me kind of like just not do things for the sake of doing things. I'm like, oh, that's cool, and that's hard. It's like, well, I'm doing it now because I understand, like based upon this person's asymmetry, based upon their like the time required for the jump, based upon their force time curve. There's just all these different things that can give us more information to make appropriate decisions from.
Yeah, and that's why I kind of alluded to like earlier, like your ACL patients couldn't be in a better position, because even if John or I had access to force plates, just in our settings, we really couldn't even use the information, right? Like you're taking that stuff, able to like analyze what you see on the screen and then create the program and go from there, right? Like, so the one-on-one access that the athlete is getting is just, off the charts, right?
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, like it's just so different with the setting. Like I think like it's like I started working with like healthy people, like whatever, when I was like a strength coach in college and everything like that. And then it's like now that I work with like mostly like injured people, when I think about writing a program for somebody who's like fully healthy, I'm like, I don't even know like where I kind of start sometimes, right? Like like my head is just kind of isn't there. Like I could do the end stage last 2 weeks before you get ready, and like not that it's funny because it's really not that writing those programs shouldn't be that different than what I do on a day-to-day basis, but like in my head sometimes it is, which is why I think like it's like using that type of data in a setting, like I don't know, because I don't do it. Like people do it, but I don't test all these healthy athletes and give them programs for them all the time. It's like I would use it as a screening tool. I would use it as to a certain degree motivation, because you can then athletes have objective things they can compare to each other, which is always can be a very good thing. But yeah, like would be interesting to see how, because you guys would figure it out and you would find a use for it, which would be really cool to see like what you guys actually do with it. It's just so different when you are programming for and coaching 6 kids, 8 kids, 12 kids, whatever it is at once, versus like I'm one-on-one for an hour. It's a totally different world.
So Trevor, this actually kind of segues into what I was going to bring up with Eric after, or a potential topic that I was going to bring up with him after anyway, because I know you have to go in a couple minutes here. You just mentioned like being in a one-on-one model. And this question is, there's definitely some personal bias in it, because right now where I'm doing like starting to do exit interviews with our summer interns and talking about where they want to go next and whatnot. And people go into a model assuming like, or they see a model from the outside. I mean, a business model.
Yeah.
And they assume like, all right, that's the best, that's the worst, like as if these are like rankable things. So in your setting, so your one-on-one PT, what's like the biggest plus compared to other kind of settings you've worked in, and what's the biggest minus or biggest drawback that you can't quite do that you could in a different model?
From a purely physical therapy standpoint, I don't think you could have a better model than what we do, to be honest, because like the alternative is like I see 4 people in an hour and I'm miserable and I can't give anybody attention, right? So it's like from a purely rehab standpoint, physical therapy standpoint, like I don't think I couldn't ask for anything more. Like I really couldn't. It gives me the ability to like take my time through my sessions, right? Like I don't have to rush things. Like if we're going to do like one of my late stage girls, it's like we were doing flying 10s this last week as she's getting ready to like leave for camp and stuff. It's like, it's not like, oh, I have 10 minutes and we're going to like warm up for 5 minutes and then do flying 10s, right? Which like would be very dumb to do with any athlete, regardless of somebody coming off of an injury. So it's like, I have the luxury of the time to be able to like go through every progression that I want to, which is I'm like grateful for, because it allows me to truly see like that long-term progression of athletes. I would say the only like the hardest limitation I would say that we have in our setting is more of like kind of the insurance stuff. Is if people's like some people's plans will only pay for like 15 visits a year. It's like if you're an ACL, 15 visits a year is not going to do anything for you, right? So it's like we have to then try to be creative in terms of giving them enough stuff to do outside on their own, and so they can be making progress and at the time when they're not with us. But it's like, yeah, in an ideal world, I'd see every ACL kid 3 times a week for 8 to 10 months, and they would probably all do fairly well, just because it's like that's 3 days of one-on-one for an hour where we would be able to really go through a thorough progression of every quality that they need to get back to their sport. So I would say like from the one-on-one hour setting, we have it made, and we're very fortunate for that. From the overall physical therapy rehab standpoint, the hardest thing really is like when you are backed up against not having enough time or not having enough insurance visits or whatever it is to like get people kind of where they need to.
Sure. Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Trevor, I know you got to get going here, but Eric, any closing words for Trevor?
No, I think we just scratched the surface on a lot of stuff here, and I think if you'll have us back, I'll continue to kiss your butt if you feel good about it yourself. So just let me know when you're not feeling good about yourself, and you can come back on the pod.
Give my tires pumped is pretty nice.
Yeah,
I appreciate it. No, this was awesome, guys. I would love to come back on again. It's always fun talking shop with the boys, and yeah, this is. I mean, like honestly, like you guys are as influential on me as anybody else is in terms of like what I do and how I think. That's why it's like our group of us who are always kind of texting about things. It's like I learn more from you guys than I do like probably anybody else kind of out there right now, like whether it's social media or whatever, because it's like I always want to learn from people who actually like do what they say, right? Like you guys, like I appreciate our group because we talk about like what we actually do with real people, not fake, how I would treat this, 100-meter sprinter or whatever. It's like, well, that's cool, but you don't actually work with those people. Like, it's like, oh, John, how do you work with professional baseball players? Well, this is how he actually works with them. It's like understanding like what you guys actually do is like just the best. And these kind of conversations are always fun to have.
And we'll get a timestamp on that because that's pretty much sums up what the Performance Mesh podcast is. It's real people sitting in their loungewear talking shop.
Exactly.
All right, Trevor, we're gonna get you back on for part 2 soon. Maybe deep dive a couple of those things.
Sounds good.
But maybe try to get a little more like weirdness out of you the next time.
That's fine. Yeah, bring it, man.
Pretty straightforward there. We just, we didn't have time for all the extracurriculars here, but no, Eric and I are going to keep talking here. But Trevor, thanks for hopping on.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
That was great, right? I mean, just a guy who worked with people,
and that's what the mesh is all about, right? And I thought his answer to the question I asked at the end there was pretty cool in terms of there is a downside to every model. It's something that I try to get across the interns that are both in our model and are trying to stay in a similar one or leaving it. Like I remember getting in the field and thinking like, all right, like I want to be in semi-private. That's like obviously the best model. Well, it's the model that I'm most comfortable in and the model I have the most experience in, but there's like definitely pluses from other models that you can't get in semi-private, right? So Eric, tell me like the model that you coach in terms of like your client to coach ratio, how frequently you get kids, et cetera. What are the biggest pluses? What are the biggest minuses that like you can't necessarily get within your current setup?
So I just wanted to start off by saying that, Trevor sees the people one-on-one, right? And you've worked one-on-ones. I just can't do one-on-ones. It's unless the person is like a good friend of mine, I can get through the hour, but I just have a really tough time staying with one person for an hour. It's probably just the fact that I've really only worked in semi-private and I just am not really stimulated enough I like to just like be bouncing around and help person to person. So I'll like if you were to say like, what's your perfect way to work with an athlete? Like I would, even if I had the choice of one-on-one, I would probably just continue to do like a small group personal training, right? So my whole career, I've worked in a ratio of like between 4 to 6 is probably the max athletes I have. We have kids come in, I would say probably like 60-40, 60% 2 times a week, the other 40% 3 times a week. I think we have a good environment. I mean, it's enough people where, and I think you'll talk about this, but they're kind of the ratio of like coaching to environment is a plus. There's still like a little bit of camaraderie about the group. And I encourage a lot of like just talking amongst your peers within the gym. And I know things are like up the way I want is when people are like actually like cheering on and commenting about their workout and talking about what they have. And kind of like what they lifted that session and what they're kind of like a little bit of competitiveness going on in the session. I think the biggest drawback, and I don't know if you have to deal with this as much, but I have to deal with a lot with the field sport athletes I work with. I just don't have that much control over their program. So I'm just competing a lot with people that really don't know anything about training or about like athletic development or really anything about their sports, to be honest. Like a lot of high school coaches, and I'm not like standing on my like platform and pointing my thumb at people, pointing my finger at people, but like there's just a lot of athlete destruction going on compared to athlete development. And I think a goal of mine within the next year is to really try to help as many high school coaches understand the demands of their sport and what they should actually be doing in practice, so that I can be a little bit more, I can have a little bit more of an influence. But just because you get a kid who's just wrecked from practice or has club coach practice and it's just wiped out, you really can't make that much of an impact with him, right? Like you could do the best you can, but it's really not going to show up that much because they don't have the resources in their body to make any change from the training, right? So that's kind of positives and kind of just like a little bit of the battle that I'm fighting.
Yeah, sure. That makes a ton of sense. I mean, our brand name and reputation in the baseball world makes it such that like our baseball guys, typically it's easier to control the variables like you're talking about because they listen to, they're willing to listen to us. And it's not everybody. It's not like we're 100% of the time that somebody is like, not doing some nonsense throwing program on top of something else and doing all kinds of conditioning outside of what we're giving them, et cetera. The non-baseball athletes are the bigger challenge on that front. So we are, I don't know the exact percentage, somewhere between 10 and 20% non-baseball in terms of our athletes. And those are the hardest ones to control the variables of like making sure they're not like, their training isn't like a heavier day that's going to make them sore a day before like a weekend tournament that we didn't know about. And so for us, the way we've always tried to combat that, at least since I've been up here over the last 5 years, and I imagine before that too, is just to establish like frequency is the goal. And so because if you get someone in your doors more and more often, the better chance you have of controlling the variables, the better chance they have of saying like, all right, like this is a bigger part of my life than XYZ thing that I'm going to listen to. It's like, I mean, our pricing structure is set up so like you come 3 days a week, you come 6 days a week, it's the same price. So we try to sell everybody onto that. Our most common of that is 4 days a week, would be my guess. I think 4 days a week is most common. We occasionally get some 5s and some 6s. I don't think it's necessary for most kids. If you get 4 good training sessions a week, you're going to see a ton of progress. And for most people. So the hardest ones are like the ones you said, you get them once or twice a week. They're doing a bunch of other things on top of it. The days they come in change. So like it's Monday, Wednesday, one week, and then it's Tuesday, Friday the next week. And so just like all over the place. Like in my opinion, the people who see the best success in our model are the people who like, all right, it's Monday. This is what they're going to do on Monday. This is what they're going to do on Tuesday, et cetera. And so they just stick to like this very established routine. And in terms of like pros and cons, we're talking about like, for me, it's always been like I've done personal training. Like you said, it can be a little monotonous and boring. You have some great clients and some that are tough to work with. And it's just, you got to be kind of locked in the zone when you're doing it. And it's not nearly as stimulating as like a semi-private or group environment. It's sometimes group environments that can feel a little bit like babysitting. I think that's the biggest downside, just getting people in the right spot at the right time. So I've always loved kind of living in the middle and semi-private where, our floor will have anywhere from 20 to 35 people training at a time most of the day. Obviously, beginning, end of the day, we might have less than that, but 20 to 30 is kind of the most common number you're going to walk into the gym and see when we're in our like off seasons. And so my goal in my role, my goal is always to have like, 30 couple minute touch points with everybody versus getting locked in with somebody. And that's just difference in like my setup in relation to the environment. But like the biggest pro I think is you can get a lot more people, right? The biggest con is like it is challenging to have like maybe the technique be as good as it would be if you were one-on-one with the person at all times. It's challenging to monitor things like you might in a group setting, like in a team setting, like, all right, if somebody's showing up late or skipping sessions, like that person's going to have consequences. In semi-private, it's like, or in the private sector, it's like, all right, well, we hope we get them next time. And so it's very hard to like get on people, if that makes sense, in our models. But I think in the big picture, those are small problems to have.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a person, a specific type of person that I have succeeded with, and there's a certain type of person that I've definitely failed with, right? Like, there are people that just like love to come in and train with me, and they 100% of the time they kick ass, right? But like you said, the babysitting part, there's just like a person who kind of comes in that thinks that this is what they should be doing, and their days and times change and they don't really care that much. And there's 4 other people training, like that person's probably going to fall through the cracks. So that's definitely a big minus, right? So we want to obviously limit the amount of people that in our building that are not making progress, right? That's bad, right? So,
and this is I think, I don't know if you'll agree with me on this one, but I'm guessing based off what you just said you would, but I've always said it's like much easier to like I haven't said it this way, but it's like to tame a tiger in the gym than it is to like motivate somebody who doesn't want to be there. If you give me a kid who wants to run through a wall, I can create that program that's hard enough for him that he doesn't feel like he needs to add stuff, and he starts seeing progress and he falls in love with it. That's a much easier task for me than taking the kid who just like doesn't want to be there and convince them to be there over time. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, that's funny. I have this kid. I think he's going in 8th grade. He's been training for about 6 months. He doesn't know his warm up, and we did the same warm up. He asked me what a goblet squat was the other week, and he's had goblet squats on every single program. So and I went up to him. I said, "What's the deal, man? Do you want to be here?" And he goes, "Yeah." I was like, "Well, you have to show me that you want to be here going forward." So I'm kind of just, I have to ride the kid a little bit, but like, you can't do much with that sometimes.
No, and like some of my favorite clients are the ones who are like a little borderline stupid about the way they train.
Yeah.
And they might be like, some of them are like really bright kids, but the kids I'm picturing are like ones that like are like annoyed that they're not supposed to go up 20 pounds on something, or or like, wait, what do you mean? Why do I have to rest between this? Like, I want to like just the motor's really high. Or the kid who like will miss a couple days for like a school something or their family something, and then we'll just like come in and hit like 4 training sessions in a row to make up for it, like 4 days in a row instead of spacing.
Yeah, like just not gonna miss.
Yeah, just to get back on track. Like, give me that kid every day of the week. Like, I can figure out how to work with that kid. I mean, we're saying what I think is kind of obvious, but in the private sector, you don't always choose people's motivations, right? Like, but you can hopefully create an environment where you get more motivated people than non-motivated people. The non-motivated people kind of weed themselves out because they're like, all right, well, this isn't the place I want to be. Like, if you want to go to a place and relax and everyone around you is working hard, you're like, well, this is not for me.
Yeah. So I have a big question for you, and it's something that we've talked about a lot, right? If you can only pick one thing, environment or program, right? So like, Just think about a good program, a B level program, A plus environment, or a B level environment or an A plus program.
I would go with the first one, but the
Okay.
key is there that it's like a B program, like an F program, A plus environment, no good. But like to me,
Yeah, there's plenty of those. There's plenty
there's a lot of
those,
those,
right?
right? There's a lot of those, and honestly, even some of those get results, and they get results in short spurts, right?
Mhm,
Like everything works for like 6 or 8 weeks until it doesn't,
mhm.
right? Or until you get hurt. But if you have like a B program and an A plus environment, you can take that B program and make it an A program. But if you have like a environment and a great program, it doesn't
Yeah,
matter as much, because we
I
see
think you.
that. And the reason I'm biased that way is like we write a decent amount of distance based programs, and we have over the years. We have less now than we used to, just because we've set it up in a way that more people come in than not. But like the kids who some of those kids get almost the exact same program. I write the programs, and the only things I change for the distance based ones, like, all right, he has this equipment versus this equipment, so I've got to modify this. This might be technique wise a little too hard without coaching, so I'm gonna like dumb it down a little bit. And the kids who come in person get better at like a significantly faster rate, like at a
Yeah, I mean,
significantly faster rate.
and like there's not a better place to get a program from than CSP, right? For in the baseball world, that you guys are, and this is me talking, right? You don't have to say it, but there's not a better place to get a program from. And if you're not there, though, there's a lot of places it's better to get a program from, if that makes sense, right? So,
No,
I
I mean,
mean, if you're just not in the building, getting the coaching and feeling other people trying to get better around you, it's just not. It's just the kind of a piece of paper.
look, if it's a kid who's worked with us in person and for whatever reason he'll be living elsewhere like the next summer or whatever, that's easy because then I know how to
Mhm.
communicate with that kid. I know he'll be able to follow everything, etc. When it's a kid who's like never trained with us in person, that's a totally different ballgame. Like usually I'd rather see that kid. Like I've kind of kicked people over to, hey, I know this guy in the area. Why don't you just go see
Mhm.
him? Like,
Yeah, yeah.
why don't you just go to them? Whether it's I don't think I've had anytime recently in New Jersey, but like I know I've had a couple in the Connecticut area that are like immediate, like, hey, just go see Ranfone, you're closer,
Mhm.
like stuff like that. That's just it's just going to be a better product for the person. And then it's a win-win, right? So
Mhm.
if at some point they have somebody that is a better fit for us, I know that the place I'm sending them to are going to kick it back. So,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
even if they don't, it's just the right thing to do for the kid. Like, hey, this will be a better product for you.
Mhm.
So, all right, Eric, we're gonna do a one on Wednesday night this week, I believe. Correct?
Yeah, I mean, if you don't flake out on me, then I mean,
Well, the
I would
reason
appreciate it.
I
But hey,
flaked.
John, I wanted to wish you congratulations. You had a big part of your career this weekend, and just tell the audience about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird saying congratulations for myself. It's not at all really about me. But so one of my favorite athletes I've worked with, his name's Jake Fishman. Known Jake since 2017. Written his programs for 4+ years in the off seasons. And like Jake will maybe not agree with this, but a lot of at this point is like, hey, what do you feel like you need? What do you want to work on? Like it's a lot of feedback from him. I feel like more of a guide on that front than I do like this is what we have to hammer home. He's 27, he's got a long training age, etc. Right? So it's a very different mindset than like I'm going to program for the 16-year-old. I'm going to tell him exactly what to do. But like we have long conversations throughout the off season of what he needs more of or less of. So I remember in 2019 telling him, hey, when you get called up to the big leagues, like, and Jake was a 30th round draft pick, D3 kid. When you get called to the big leagues, I'm going to be there. Like, I think I told him, like, I better not find out on Twitter. I want to hear it from you. And so he calls me like late Thursday night last week. He's getting moved up to the taxi squad. Then again, Friday afternoon, hey, that taxi squad, which is basically like a wait list that the big league teams travel with. That taxi squad, hey, he's getting activated. And so he went from like 2 weeks prior, he was up here for the All-Star break, and he was like, "Yeah, there's probably no chance this year." To like all of a sudden, it's that Friday. I was like, all right, I gotta get down there to Miami. So I flew down Sunday morning. He pitched 3 1/3 on Sunday, which was really cool. So that was a first for me. Or not the first guy I've had that has made it, a first guy that I've been there for his debut, put it that way. But which was really cool. And then obviously look forward to working with him again this off season. And he's back in AAA now, but hopefully he can stick it next year.
Yeah, I mean that's it. It's I mean you work with a lot of people that don't make it in this profession, right? And it's really cool that you had a piece to it. I'm sure he would give you more credit than you're giving yourself. So I'll wish congratulations to the fish man, and he'll direct the congratulations to you because you can't take a compliment.
And well, thank you, but we'll get him on. We'll get him on this offseason. He'll be a good podcast guest.
Oh, I'm looking forward to it.
He's an interesting dude. Like, he makes more money through some app he created than he does playing professional baseball.
There aren't many of those.
No.
And if nothing else, this podcast is bringing unique people to the masses.
Yeah, there's no boring people on the podcast.
Only unique ones. All right, John.
Man.
So we'll thanks everybody for listening. We'll see you guys for the midweek, and keep meshing, everybody.
All right. Talk soon, folks.